Hey guys, so here we are, Codependency Part 2. Now, before we start, if you haven't seen the first part, I greatly encourage it. It's the video before this one, mid-month readings. If you aren't aware, I do read tarot, and they will be out here in a few days. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, if you haven't seen the first part of the codependency video, I would definitely check that out. Especially if you aren't familiar or as familiar, or even if you feel like you know everything about codependency, I feel like it would be a good idea to kind of just check that out and get that out of the way. These are our tea times. So if you want to grab a cup, click pause, grab a journal if you want to keep a journal. If you have already, if you haven't watched a video till now, welcome. And you're more than welcome to grab yourself a journal. Because this is just to kind of help spark ideas, do some reflection on ourselves and all that good stuff. So today, now I was going to have a completely different video on codependence today. I was going to kind of dive a little more deeper into like my codependent journey and how I still choose to overcome it. And it's still about that. However, it's completely different because I discovered something completely different in the time that in the time that it's been between videos. So that is something. Also kind of nervous because it really hit me hard. So what I am going to do real quick is kind of go over, kind of like touch on my story a little bit more. It didn't take much in the past for me to really fall for somebody because I just sought validation, which is the biggest common factor in codependent personality. So it's about gaining validation outside of yourself. You don't know how to validate yourself. You don't know how to really establish your own worth without another person. It doesn't have to be romantic all the time. It could be a parent, it could be a friend, it could be all of them. And most of the time it is all three. With a romantic partner, family, friends. However, the codependent also doesn't like people who challenge them. Or they say the truth and they just kind of like brush it off. From personal experience as well as knowing people around me. Now, in my personal story, I just gave my all to a person in the past. And there's a reason why I'm telling this and leading up to the lesson I learned this week. I'm feeling extremely vulnerable right now. So, and it's not about this part. It's about the part that I just learned because I was very codependent. I would completely invest myself in someone who obviously didn't care for me. It was extremely obvious. I would, anytime I got in a relationship, I'd get lost in relationships. I didn't have a sense of self. I was living for the other person. Even if we weren't in a relationship, there were a couple people in my life that, I just, I had no reason, nor should I have opened my heart in the way that I did and loved them to the extent that I did. And like I said in the video before, if you haven't watched that video, please check that out. It has a lot of backstory. It has a lot of good points to kind of touch on before you watch this one. On my yogi tea, it says, be giving, forgiving, compassionate, and loving. And that is what we're going to talk about today. That's funny. That's hilarious. So you didn't have to fight for me. If I felt like I cared for you, hey guys, calm down. Chewy, calm down. Sorry. They just lose their minds in there. So you didn't have to fight for me if I felt like I had a chance. A little bit later on, but overall, like my heart chakra was completely overactive. If you're not sure what that means, now with your chakras, there is to be a balance, and it's not always going to be perfect. But with your heart chakra particularly, if it's overactive, you fall in love super easy. You have no boundaries. You jump from relationship to relationship. You get infatuated super easy. You romanticize things a lot because it's hard to face reality that people are imperfect, and that and even if you recognize their imperfections, you still romanticize it. You have absolutely no sense of self because everything is outside of yourself to validate that love that is always within you and that love for yourself. There's a lot of other factors with an overactive heart chakra, but my heart chakra was extremely overactive, and it has a lot to do with my codependency. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because recently I've discovered I'm not going to say that I went the opposite way with it, but it's definitely, if there was the line in the middle, I was a little more on the side of, just not, my heart hardly being open. Not in the sense, like I was open to people. I was open to friends. I was open to family. But it took me a while to be open to love. It actually took a few months ago, actually a little bit more now, when I realized just how closed up I was and how it really messed with me and it harmed my heart. I think us who are recovering from codependency, just as when you're codependent, you have one extreme. Sometimes we go to the other extreme, and it takes a while for us to meet in the middle to find a healthy balance. But I know that for me, I had the other day, I woke up with this anxiety. I just could not shake it, and I had to be at work. I have 3 jobs. So I teach in the morning, I do this, and I also work at another place. So I was there, and it involves the public, and I woke up with the worst anxiety that I've had in a long, long time. And my heart was trying to tell me something. I kept trying to brush it off, and I kept trying to make excuses as to, oh, it's just anxiety, like it'll go away. I'll vape some CBD, I'll have some tea, I'll do whatever. Have some tea. But the reality of it is that my heart was trying to tell me something. I was hurting so bad, and I didn't know why. And I didn't have a whole lot of time to really face myself, but I was forced to, in the middle of work, to go in the bathroom and have a mini breakdown almost, and just cry it out. And really, I mean, not to be dramatic, but I know people say cancers are crybabies. Of course, most of my chart is fire, but cancers are crybabies, and like, so what? Number one. But also, I cry at a lot of things since I've become a mother. I'm more sensitive to things, and I'm not afraid to cry. But it really has to hurt me when it comes to something personal rather than it be reactive to something in front of me. When it comes internally, it takes a lot for me to cry it out. And I want to talk to people who have, who are recovering from codependency, to be aware of this, because I feel like some of you need to hear it. So Leah, just tell us already. So when I had this breakdown, it wasn't super dramatic, but tears were falling literally, like there was a little puddle right in front of me. And then when your heart speaks, when you're still and you take the time to really listen to yourself, I heard and felt with every fiber of my being that it is okay to want to be loved. It is okay to feel love from a source outside of ourselves. You don't lose your personal power by being vulnerable. And I recognized that I had this fear and I felt weak when I felt I wanted to be loved by something outside of myself, particularly in the romantic sense. And there's certain reasons why I'm having to face this right now, but I'm glad I am, regardless of anything in the future. I am so grateful that I am facing this now. And I think this is something to be brought to the attention of those codependent personalities that are recovering, people who are no longer codependent but was at one time, who fear reverting back to those old places, because it's hard for us. You know, we get to this place of self-love and we learn to trust ourselves, but then there's just this little voice that keeps us from truly trusting the lessons we have learned and how much that we've changed. And I get it, and I think it's good to be self-aware. Be self-aware of ourselves and kind of see how far we've come. But at the same time, we can't close our hearts out of fear. We can't buy into the story that the only way we're going to know how to be a functioning human being in a healthy way is to be alone. I had to face myself and the fact that I felt weak for wanting to be loved. Even though I love myself, even though I trust myself, even though I have learned to the very core of my being who I am, and I fully embraced who I am, and I love myself, and I'm getting to the point where I respect myself. But underneath all of that, there is this fear. There's this part of me that's like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to who I was. I never want to go back to being that person. I don't want to make excuses for a person. I don't want to go back to this place of my life where I am mistreated because I didn't know how to set my boundaries. And that's also not trusting yourself, by the way. And it's normal. But we do not lose our personal power by making ourselves vulnerable. We actually lose our personal power. And it's funny how these actually go in together, from my first video to this video and the tea talk, because the first one was about personal power. And this is a whole new dynamic to that. We cannot live in fear of losing ourselves. We will lose ourselves in fear if we allow it to stay. And I think that even though I say it's normal, I think it's good that we sit with ourselves and forgive ourselves for not trusting who we've become, as well as maybe the person of interest that's coming into our lives. We can miss out, which I know a lot of people don't like that, because it's like, oh, if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. And it's like, you know what? I hear that a lot, and it sounds like an excuse to me, to make you feel better for the opportunities that you missed. It just sounds like an excuse at this point concerning this particular situation. It's like, oh, but because you can't expect, like, for example, with romance, I'm going to really focus on romance because that's a lot to do with codependency. So if you're on the other side of the healing process, because it's forever a healing process, and you have these walls up because you're afraid of losing what you have, how the hell do you expect you are becoming the person that you probably attracted into your life. A little bit. Where you're emotionally unavailable. Where you kind of want them and you kind of don't. That's not fair. You shouldn't even be dating anybody. You're not ready to date someone just because you love yourself. You also have to be willing to face these parts of yourself when you find a person worthy of facing these parts of yourself. And be honest with them. If it's new or whatever, like, obviously this is something that you're working out, and you could probably reveal it to them later, whatever feels comfortable to you, but at least be working on it. I feel like I just keep going back to the whole, if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. It's like, no. If you want love in your life, if that's something, first you have to admit that you do want it. And if that is something that you want in your life, you're going to have to do the work on yourself. Because it's not that person who hurt you, hopefully. Hopefully you're not trying to revert back to a person that, you were with at a lower vibration, a different mindset in your life. If so, there is a whole other look you need to take at yourself. And the biggest reason why I wanted to touch on this is because I am still going through it. And I think it's something that I am going to have to accept about myself, that I have built such a wall that I need to be aware of why it's there. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, by the way. And for you guys, try and write down, if you have a journal or even a piece of paper, whatever, if this is resonating with you, try and write down, by the way, like this is just something you can try and learn it by yourself, but really it won't be tested until, like I said, you find someone who you genuinely would like to try again with. But I really feel like this is something that codependents have to deal with in the aftermath. Not only do we have to deal with ourselves, not only do we have to sit with ourselves, the most beautiful part about this is how self-aware we are after this entire process, during this entire process, because it's forever a process with us. And it's gorgeous. It's the best. Being self-aware, and getting real with ourselves and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's a beautiful thing. But it doesn't feel great in the moment. All I'm saying is, for those who face these struggles like I do, who, if you've pushed someone away already because you just didn't want to revert back to old ways, you didn't trust yourself. It's not that, and maybe the person did something to where you decided, hey, I can't, we're not doing this today. Nah. But aside from that, make sure you're being real with yourself and make sure it's just not a story you made up in your head. Be careful of the stories you tell yourself. Rewrite them. Once you figure out what story you're telling yourself over and over, rewrite it. And let your heart speak over your mind. Now, this day that I was talking about, where I discovered this saying that you don't lose your personal power by being vulnerable, it seemed that my mind, there was nothing in my heart that could soothe what was happening in my mind. And the fact of the matter is that it's when I became still and I allowed myself to feel everything I felt that this realization came to me. So understand that if you are a recovering codependent, and you're anything like me, it is going to forever be a process. It's going to take a lot of tears, a lot of pain, a lot of sitting alone with yourself. It's going to take kind of allowing your mind and your heart to fight it out and paying attention to what your heart has to say over your mind. Now, it is good to be logical about some things, of course. I'm not saying completely throw out logic, but sometimes there are certain situations where your heart's just going to have to guide you as much as it scares you, because we were so motivated by our heart, or what we, our heart being overactive and hurting ourselves and having to forgive ourselves for that. I understand how scary that could be, but sometimes it's hard. It's time to just open up. Understand that no one is going to tell you that you can't feel both. You can love yourself and let someone else love you, and you love them. You can trust yourself to move at a slower pace or at the pace that's comfortable for you, and trust your intuition. You are allowed to want to be loved. Everybody just wants to be loved. Everybody just wants to love. And it is harder to find someone to love you back than to give love. And that's where your lessons come in. That's where your wisdom that you've gained from this chapter of your life in codependency into now. And if you're just starting your journey, I mean, kudos to you. You are so brave. Take baby steps. Start becoming self-aware. You'll learn a lot as you go along. And I was going to go over those baby steps, but I really felt like this was the video that needed to happen, because I was convinced I was going to still do the other one. I was convinced that I'll just make a separate video on this experience of mine and, just stuff like that. So, sorry, my dog. And as you can see, I'm a lot less, this is something super close to me. I am definitely going through a different chapter in my life right now. It's not dramatic, it's just different. And I think the biggest thing with codependency also that I would like to touch on is attachments to outcomes. But also in the awareness of not getting attached to outcomes and just enjoying the moment, also understand that you are going to have moments, especially when it involves romantic relationships, that you are going to feel insecure, that you are going to have thoughts go through your head, that you are going to get scared and you're going to want to run and you're going to want to hide and you're going to want to just be like, you know what? It's just easier not to deal with this shit. I just don't want to deal with it. Or it's just easier if I'm alone. If I'm alone, I don't have to worry about throwing myself under the bus and acting codependently and falling in love with someone or allowing someone into my life. And everything will be hunky-dory. Everything's going to be the same. I can still continue to love myself. And I don't need to love someone else to prove that I love myself. And that's true, but that's defense. It's a defense mechanism. And when we're defensive, we're not living from our heart. It's from the ego. It's from fear. It's from pain. It's keeping that little itty-bitty place that codependency has in our lives and keeping it alive when it has no room in our lives anymore. So, my loves, if this is something that you're struggling with, please leave a comment below. Please like this video. If you want me to do a video on, I'll probably still do a video on how to, if you're a recovering codependent and you're just starting. I'm not just going to do T-series, so I'll probably actually do an informative video on that. But these tea talks are just very formal, and they're just kind of free talk, and you could take notes. But that's something that I discovered about myself. Yeah. It's scary sometimes. But it's a good kind of scared. It's one of those fearful things that's like, I know I'm going to be afraid, but shit, the stuff I'm going to learn, it's priceless. It's something people don't even get to learn in their life. Sometimes they get to go to their grave, thinking they're not enough, thinking that if they're alone, that their life is well lived. And it could have been. But I feel like a lot of us do it out of fear. It's just easier. I'm not that person. I've never taken the easy way in life. I didn't become who I am by always running away from my shit. So, if you want to make a serious change in your life, if you do want love, if you want something authentic in your life, start working on yourself and continue to work on yourself. And believe that in the romantic sense especially, anyone who's worthy of your time and of you, you won't lose yourself if it's with the right person. They'll never let you lose yourself because that's who they fell for. And no matter how anything turns out, take the lessons that come with it. Embrace the lessons that you're going to learn in the process. Because we can talk a big talk. We could say I'm going to be this way, this way, and this way, but it's not till the time comes when we start to open our hearts again that we're really challenged in these things. And you can do it. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to really trust yourself and figure out what parts of you don't trust as much as you thought you did. And be okay with that. Because that's where you can build from. And don't push someone away because of your fear. Don't push anyone. If you have to bow out, bow out. But be sure of your reasoning. So, my loves, that is it for this one. That is it for this tea talk. I'm only halfway through my cup, but I'll just take it inside. Like I said, I'll be posting mid-month readings here in a few days. So keep an eye out for that. I love you. I love you so much. If you need anything, message me. If you resonated with this, or if you feel like this is something that you went through as a recovering codependent, please leave a comment below, like, subscribe, send it to a friend. Send it to a friend if you feel like this is something that they deal with. And maybe they're just not aware and you don't know how to say it. Of course, this is a big way to say it, but it's definitely worth noting because you are worthy of healing, and the only person who can heal you is yourself. You have to make that choice. So anyway, I love you, and I will see you guys later. Bye.